everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Affair Diaries. How's your day going so far? I hope it's been great, but if not, don't stress, you're in the perfect spot to relax and dive into some juicy relationship stories. There's always something new and unexpected waiting around the corner here. Before we jump in, leave a comment and share something good from your day. Let's keep the good vibes going and start this story together.
Our next Reddit story comes from our /off me chest, where the OP found his girlfriend in bed with his dad. I'm a 22-year-old man who was in a long-term relationship with my girlfriend, Kate, a fake name, who's 21. We had been together for almost 3 years, and I thought our relationship was strong. Kate was always kind, supportive, and honest. We had frequent dates, our love life was great, and we rarely fought. If we ever did argue, we managed to talk through it and reach an understanding quickly. From my perspective, our relationship seemed healthy and full of love. But I recently discovered that I was very wrong. A week ago, I started to notice that Kate was acting differently. She became protective of her phone, which was strange because she had always let me use it if I needed to make a call or if my phone was dead. She even had games on her phone that I played sometimes when she wanted to watch her favorite shows. But recently, she would get upset if I even touched her phone or moved it, especially if it was near the edge of a table or counter where it might fall. When I asked her about it, she would brush me off and say she was just in a bad mood. This response only added to my confusion, and I started to get more concerned. I eventually asked Kate if she was hiding something from me, which led to a heated argument. She accused me of not trusting her and suggested that I was accusing her of cheating. Things escalated to the point where she got a bit physical, and I decided to end the fight by telling her to sleep in the guest bedroom for the night. Kate was furious, but I didn't want things to get worse, so I told her we'd talk about it in the morning. The next day, we talked, and Kate apologized for how she had acted. She even offered me her phone, but I told her I didn't need to go through it because I trusted her. Looking back now, I realized that I was being naive. I truly believed that her behavior was because of stress from work, but I was wrong. The day after our conversation, something strange happened. Kate received a missed call from my father. Now, I need to explain something here. My father had never liked Kate, and I was pretty sure Kate didn't like him either. At family gatherings, they would always argue or exchange sarcastic comments until the atmosphere became so uncomfortable that we had to leave. So, when I saw that my father had called Kate, I couldn't understand why. I asked her about it, and she seemed nervous, giving me an excuse about my upcoming birthday and how he was planning something for me. That didn't make sense to me because my father and I aren't that close, but I didn't push the issue at the time. Then, the next night, something happened that completely changed everything. I had texted Kate earlier that I'd be working late and wouldn't be home until around 10 p.m. due to my shift at work. However, there was an issue at my workplace involving my manager, and we were sent home early. By 7 p.m., I was already on my way home. I tried calling Kate to let her know, but her phone was off. This wasn't too unusual, as she sometimes turns it off when she's at home. But what happened next was what really shook me. As I approached my house, I noticed my father's car parked a couple of houses down from mine. This was strange because my father rarely visits, and when he does, he doesn't park far away. I tried calling him, but his phone was also off, which I found odd. My mother, who is handicapped and depends on my father for support, always makes sure his phone is on so she can reach him when she needs something. At this point, I thought maybe my mother was with him, and I wanted to surprise her. I hadn't seen her in a while, so I quietly opened the front door and stepped inside. What I saw when I entered the kitchen made my heart stop. There, in my kitchen, was Kate. She was bent over the counter, and my father was behind her, in a position I wish I could erase from my memory. They both froze when they saw me and immediately started yelling, saying it wasn't what it looked like and that they could explain. But I didn't want to hear any of it. I was too shocked and disgusted to even speak. I turned around, locked the front door from the outside with the deadbolt, and left. I went straight to a friend's house and haven't been back since. Since that night, both Kate and my father have been calling and texting me nonstop, apologizing and begging me not to tell anyone what happened. I feel nothing but disgust. Disgust for my father, who will be 60 next month and is supposed to be caring for my mother, and disgust for Kate, who I thought was the love of my life. I feel sick to my stomach thinking about how long they might have been doing this behind my back. The worst part is, I don't know how to handle this situation without it spiraling out of control. I'm most concerned about how my mother will react. She relies on my father for so much and she adores him. This would devastate her. I don't need closure from either of them, and I don't want to confront them. I don't want to know how their relationship started or how long it's been going on. I just need advice on how to deal with this without making the situation worse than it already is. Should I tell my mother? Should I confront them both in person, or just cut them out of my life without another word? I feel so lost and betrayed, and I don't know how to move forward from this. Any advice is welcome, and I appreciate anyone who took the time to read this. Advice to OP: it's important to prioritize your own emotional well-being right now. Take some time away from both your father and Kate to process what happened. Before making any decisions, consider talking to a trusted friend or therapist to help sort through your feelings. When you're ready, you may need to have a calm, private conversation with your father to decide how to approach this situation without hurting your mother further. Keep your focus on healing and protecting your peace during this difficult time. Next story. Our next Reddit story comes from r/marriage, where the OP found his wife in bed with multiple men. I've recently uncovered something about my wife that has left me in shock and completely devastated. I'm unsure how to move forward and could really use some advice. I'm 40 years old and my wife is 37. We've been married for 10 years, and we just celebrated our anniversary not too long ago. We have 2 amazing kids who mean everything to me. Our life together seemed relatively normal until earlier this year. Since the beginning of the year, I've noticed a significant change in my wife's behavior. It's been subtle at times, but it became harder to ignore as the months went by. She's been distant, irritable, and at times, completely avoiding me. Our romance life has also taken a turn for the worse. We've barely been close in months, and she always seems to have an excuse for why she's not interested. Her mood swings are the hardest to manage. One day she's in high spirits, acting like her usual self, while the next, she's moody and agitated. Sometimes, she's an amazing mother to our children, but there are also days when she seems overwhelmed and expresses regret about having them. Something about her change in demeanor didn't sit right with me, but I kept brushing it off, thinking it was stress or maybe some kind of phase. I didn't have any reason to doubt her, at least not until recently. A few months ago, I developed a urinary tract infection, which was already odd for me. When I went to the doctor, I was told it might be linked to an STD. That news hit me like a ton of bricks because I've only ever been with my wife since we started dating over a decade ago. It made no sense unless something else was going on. My wife is currently away at a business seminar, which she's mentioned before in the past. I was feeling increasingly suspicious and uneasy, and that's when I made a decision I never thought I would. For years, she's kept diaries, and although I had always respected her privacy, I was feeling desperate for answers. So I decided to read them. What I found shattered me. According to her own words, my wife has been cheating on me with multiple people for the past 2 years. There's one specific affair she had with a man that lasted over a year, and her recent irritability seems to be connected to the fact that he had moved on with someone else. As if that wasn't enough, she's also been using a hidden Tinder account to meet other men on a regular basis. I can't even begin to describe the pain I'm feeling right now. I've been blindsided by this entire situation. My whole world feels like it's crumbling down around me. I never imagined she could do something like this, especially considering our life together and the fact that we have 2 young children. Now, I'm left with so many questions and no idea what to do next. Should I confront her the moment she gets back from this so-called business seminar? Should I talk to a lawyer first before doing anything drastic? I don't know how to even start processing all of this, let alone how to protect our kids from the fallout of what's to come. This situation is unbearable, and I feel completely lost. Any advice or guidance on what steps I should take would be greatly appreciated. My children are my top priority, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for them, even though I feel like my world has just been torn apart. Update: I just found my wife has been cheating on me with multiple partners for the past 2 years. I want to start by expressing my heartfelt thanks to everyone who provided advice, support, and kind words after my initial post. The outpouring of help from this community has truly meant the world to me during one of the darkest periods of my life. Your insights and support helped me regain my footing, and for that, I am deeply grateful. After that first post, things continued to unravel, but I've tried to keep a level head through it all. My in-laws, who are still unaware of the crisis in my marriage, kindly offered to look after the kids while my wife was away at her latest business seminar. Their offer couldn't have come at a better time, as it gave me the space I needed to continue piecing everything together. While she was away, I went through more of her diaries and took photos of each entry for future reference. It was gut-wrenching, to say the least. Every page felt like a new wound. The more I read, the more I realized I didn't know the person I've been married to for the past decade. The woman I thought I loved was someone completely different. It was like she'd been living a double life, and I was just now discovering the extent of it. What I found in those diaries was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. Over the past 2 years, she had been involved with at least 6 different men. These affairs weren't just one-off mistakes. They were ongoing, happening during her business trips, dinners, and other supposed work-related events. Meanwhile, I was home, taking care of our children, and completely blind to what was really happening. Some of the entries were disturbingly detailed, describing her encounters in ways that were painful to read. It was like she was bragging about it, and what hurt the most was the complete lack of remorse. She even expressed gratitude for me, calling me a supportive husband and father, without once acknowledging the betrayal she was inflicting upon me. The sheer audacity of her actions left me questioning everything: her emotional state, her mental well-being, and, frankly, whether I ever knew her at all. Her behavior was so out of line with the person I thought I'd married that it almost seemed unreal. At one point, the pain was so overwhelming that I began having thoughts I never imagined I'd have, thoughts about ending my life. The weight of everything was just too much to carry alone. Thankfully, I reached out to some close friends, who immediately took me in. They made sure I wasn't alone, and their support was crucial in pulling me back from the brink. With their encouragement, I started seeing a therapist. I've never been to therapy before, but I'm now going once a week, and I can't overstate how helpful it's been. It's given me a space to process everything and start finding ways to cope with this betrayal. I also sought medical help to treat the STD I'd contracted. It was a bitter reminder of her infidelity, but I knew I had to take care of myself for the sake of my kids. My children are the only thing keeping me grounded at the moment. After picking them up from my in-laws and bringing them home, I couldn't muster the strength to smile or pretend everything was okay. One day, as I was sitting in the living room, lost in my own misery, my daughter walked up to me, looked at my face, and without a word, she wrapped her arms around me. That moment broke me. I held her tightly and cried like I never have before. The thought of leaving my kids behind to suffer under their mother's neglectful behavior was unbearable. My daughter's hug reminded me that I couldn't let my pain destroy me. I had to stay strong for them. The first few weeks after finding out were brutal. Sleep was almost impossible, and I had to rely on sleeping pills just to get a few hours of rest. My motivation plummeted, affecting my work and my ability to care for the kids. The only thing that gave me any relief was exercise. I pushed myself to keep working out, and to my surprise, it was the one thing that helped me feel a little more in control. For those who advised me to keep exercising in my last post, thank you. You may have unknowingly saved my life. Then came the next challenge. My wife returned from her trip. I had to dig deep into myself to hide the disgust and anger I felt toward her, pretending that everything was normal. At first, I struggled to mask my emotions, but with time, I've become more skilled at concealing my feelings. Despite the fact that she's noticed something is off, she still seems clueless about the fact that I know everything. What amazes me the most is her complete lack of shame. Just recently, she asked me about the expensive anniversary gift I had promised her but hadn't yet bought. She was planning another trip right after our anniversary, and based on her diaries, it was clear that she had met one of her lovers during that trip. To add insult to injury, she was even planning to meet up with another man on the day of my birthday. Her audacity knows no bounds. Despite everything, I've been feeling a bit better recently. Therapy and exercise have made a difference, even though I'm still dealing with a lot of emotional pain. One thing my therapist helped me realize is that this wasn't my fault. For a long time, I blamed myself for her actions. I thought maybe if I had done things differently, if I had been a better husband, maybe she wouldn't have sought attention from other men. But my therapist helped me see that no matter what I could have done differently, it doesn't justify what she did. No one deserves to be betrayed in the way I was. If I'm guilty of anything, it's putting her needs ahead of my own, time and time again. I always let her go on these trips, convincing myself that I was being a supportive husband by allowing her to focus on her career. Meanwhile, I was left to juggle work and parenting on my own. I thought I was doing the right thing by trusting her and not questioning her actions, but clearly, I was wrong. I'm not completely healed, but I'm not in the same dark place I was in a few weeks ago. These days, I find myself more angry than sad, and that anger is what's keeping me going. My therapist has encouraged me to channel that anger into productive actions, and it's working. I'm slowly starting to take control of my life again. I've also begun taking steps to protect myself and my children legally. I've consulted with 2 different law firms, and they both advised me to gather as much evidence as possible before making any moves. For the past few weeks, that's exactly what I've been doing. First, I've finished digitizing all of her diaries from the past 2 years. That was no small task, given how many entries there were. Next, I gained access to her computer and discovered an overwhelming amount of evidence. Photos, chat logs, and documents that confirm her affairs beyond a shadow of a doubt. She's also been posting about her escapades in a private Facebook group, which I've taken plenty of screenshots of. I've compiled a list of all the men she's been involved with and have been able to identify most of them through social media. I've also gathered information about where they live and work. At this point, I'm debating whether or not to confront them directly, but for now, I'm holding off until I talk more with my lawyers. The process of gathering evidence has been strangely cathartic. Maybe I'm broken too, but there's a part of me that feels a sense of satisfaction in compiling all this information. It's like piecing together a puzzle, and while it's painful, it also feels like I'm finally taking back some control. There's a part of me that wants to expose her publicly, to post everything I've found on social media and let the world see the truth. But I've refrained from doing so, mainly because I know it would hurt my kids in the long run. Her reputation would be destroyed, but so would the stability of our family, and I can't do that to them. Her parents, who have always been kind to me, would also be devastated, and I'm not sure I want to hurt them either. I've decided to hold off on confronting her until I've talked more with my lawyers. My primary goal is to secure custody of my kids, as the country I live in tends to favor mothers in custody battles, even when they're unfit. I want to make sure I'm fully prepared before I make any moves. Once I have a solid plan in place, I'll confront her about everything, set the terms for our divorce, and ensure that my children's well-being is protected. In the meantime, I'll continue gathering evidence and preparing myself for what's to come. It's not easy, but little by little, I'm starting to dig myself out of the hole I was thrown into. Thank you all again for your support. A few weeks ago, I was lost and didn't know where to turn. Now, with your advice and the help of my therapist and lawyers, I finally feel like I'm beginning to see a way forward. My priority remains my children, and I'll do everything in my power to protect them through this ordeal.